All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Viers. I am the host of the film podcast, The Shameless Picture Show, as well as a filmmaker and an alumni for the Milwaukee Short Film Festival. I've played there a couple of times, and today we are part of a panel called "Ask a Film Programmer," which sounds exactly as the title dictates. Is we have some questions submitted by other filmmakers, and then from ourselves of just important information that we think filmmakers who are submitting to film festivals, whether or not they've done it a couple times or it's their first time, some great information that we think everyone should know. They'll kind of give you some insight into how these film festivals are put together and everything that goes into it. And we have two phenomenal guests today. So let's start with Amber. If you could please introduce yourself.
Sure. My name's Amber Rose McNeil. I'm a festival director and programmer. Earlier this year, I was one of the programmers for MUFF, Milwaukee Underground Film Festival. And I have just, as of yesterday, launched my own film festival, MISFF, which is the Milwaukee Illuminate Film Festival. I'm the festival director and lead programmer, and MIFF's mission, so to speak, is to uplift the voice of underrepresented filmmakers, so exclusively for people from marginalized communities.
Oh, that's phenomenal. And then Theo, if you could please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name's Theophilus Jamal. I'm a Chicago-based filmmaker, and I've been working in film since the early '90s. And I just recently launched the Utopia Film Festival out of Waukegan, Illinois. It's a curated film festival. It's not a competition festival. So, which I guess it took me a while to launch that because we were supposed to launch in 2020, and something got in our way and set me back a few years. But it gave me a little bit of time to figure out what I wanted to do and to sort of like gauge what was happening in the world of film and in particular film festivals. So it was a really an interesting pause for that 3 years until we were able to launch earlier this year, and just sort of get our feet wet and finally get out there. So yeah, that's who I am.
Well, I just first off want to say congratulations to you both. It's not easy to run a film festival. I did 1 year of a very small online only film festival called Revenge Fest we only did 1 year, and we tried to do it during the pandemic because we just thought people needed something to occupy their time, and it's not easy. So you both get a lot of kudos from myself because like I just did it online and that was a headache. So you guys get a lot of respect from me.
Thank you.
So I just want to start with something kind of a good jumping off point. You're both film festival programs, and if I heard you correctly, you're both filmmakers as well, correct? Well,
yes.
Taste plays a big part in a film festival, but at the same time, you don't want to be exclusively just your taste. But as film festival programmers, what's important to you? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so of course, as you said, taste does play a big part. I think because I first programmed in a long-running festival, I think it was the 21st or 22nd year that MUFF was running when I programmed. I wasn't just able to step in with my taste or with my ideals to this festival, although I did push pretty hard to make it more diverse than it had been in years before. So even though, like, I will program films that aren't my particular taste, if they say something that I feel is important, or they make me feel moved, or stir emotions, or provoke thought or conversation, or give a social commentary, or maybe they're just like really funny, or it's a really like well put together film that still has some meaning. But within MUFF, it was really important for me to push forth femme presenting filmmakers, because in years past it had been quite male dominated. That had been changing gradually over the years, but I really wanted to push that, and I think we ended up with something like high 80s, low 90% femme presenting filmmakers in the festival, which was amazing. And pushing past that again, I really wanted to try and diversify that, so it wasn't just cishet white filmmakers. We wanted to get, you know, more diversity, but obviously, like, pushing against existing systems can be difficult, which is why I started my own film festival, so that can be like my main focus. So that definitely plays into it, making sure that I'm elevating voices of filmmakers who have historically been ignored, underrepresented, or kind of pushed to the side for you know, other voices in film.
No, it's a great answer.
As for myself, you know, being a filmmaker, so that gives me that sort of perspective, you know, in regards to programming a festival. Utopia is a curated festival, and my background, again, I've been involved with several festivals in which I've been screeners, one of which is the Milwaukee Shorts Film Fest I was asked to screen for, but another one is the Midwest Film Festival in Chicago. And we come across a lot of films that I'll give high ratings to, and for some reason don't get programmed. And this was happening consistently to the films that I was championing. And I'm like, what's happening here? You know, but I do understand that, you know, a lot of times what I was finding is that, you know, the films I liked were just too damn long. And which is a shame. You know, eventually those films will find a festival, but you know, I didn't want to, you know, to chance them not having an opportunity to screen someplace. So at least, you know, have that going in mind with Utopia, is, you know, having that as sort of a, you know, another outlet for these films that, you know, haven't found homes yet. And you know, I'm pretty optimistic that they will, but it's really tough out there. I used to be of the mindset that everybody and their grandmother was starting to put on the film festival, and a friend of mine really kind of put me back in my place and said, you know what, there's, you know, films deserve to get seen. You know, people are putting their effort into making these things. You know, you want it to get shown, and there's nothing more giving value to your work than, you know, to be accepted into a film festival, is what I'm saying. So, again, you know, in regards to, you know, what I'm looking for in you know, the films that I program is, I guess, to be surprised, to, you know, to see something that I haven't seen before, and to really just be entertained, without any regards to really how much something costs, or you know what, where it's coming from.
Yeah. I just, before I move on to my next question, I have a question for you, Theo, real quick. You have mentioned twice already that you run a curated film festival. For those out there who are, you know, submitting to their first film festivals, can you explain what that is and how it's different than, say, some other film festivals?
Well, in terms of my film festival, I'm the be all see all. You know, I'm the first stop for getting into my film festival, really. And I go to see a lot of movies. I go to other film festivals, and I'll make friends with the festival programmers and go, hey, you know, I saw something here that I really like. How can I get in touch with the filmmaker? I do my due diligence. Like, for this first incarnation of Utopia, I had to reach out to the filmmakers myself. And a lot of times they were like, who the hell are you? How did you get my number? I was pretty much stalking them, and then, you know, introducing them, and, you know, introducing myself to them and saying, hey, look, I'm putting together this film festival. I really like your work and would love for you to participate. But the back end of that as well is that I have the Film Freeway set up, and I let people know that I'm curated, but that if they want to submit something for me to see, I'll take a look at it. And that's pretty much an invitation to, like, floor me, like, bring it on, show me something. I want to be surprised. I want to be entertained. And if you give me something that's exceptionally good, then I will champion it. I mean, I'm like anybody else. It's like looking for the next best thing. And that's not the, coming across that is really hard sometimes. It's, sometimes it's, people they don't submit or they don't put themselves out there and sort of second guess, their own work. But, I guess I just had to, to put myself out there and say, hey, show me what you got.
No, that makes complete sense. And since I asked you a question, I'm going to ask Amber a specific question now, just to change things up a little bit. Amber, you had mentioned that in your film festival that you are trying to elevate what's the word that you used?
Underrepresented voices?
Underrepresented voices. How do you approach that, especially as a new film festival? Do you find it difficult sometimes that in terms of let me rephrase that, are the films by these filmmakers being submitted to your festival the way that you hoped, or are people not reading what your mission statement is about and just submitting to you anyways? Like, do you feel that's been a challenge for you? Because one thing I've talked to Ross about is sometimes people don't read what the film festival is about and just submit anyways.
Yeah, that definitely happens, and that happened with MISFF. We had I think over 500 films submitted, and they were like, some of them were totally off base for, like, what we had mentioned as the kind of films that we take. With MISFF, we literally only just launched Film Freeway on Friday. So being a new festival and we've only been open 2 days, we haven't started like aggressively marketing and all that kind of stuff. So submissions have been mostly through people that we already know within kind of like the Milwaukee, UWM, Chicago kind of filmmaking scene, or a couple of people who have put in specific search terms like neurodivergent, because that's not something that's super common as a search term specifically for film festivals. So far have not come across that issue because it's been slow going and we haven't started marketing. But I assume that as submissions start rolling in, that we are going to get a lot of submissions. We'll probably get floods from time to time of films made by people who don't meet the criteria for the filmmakers, or predominantly we're looking for the filmmakers to be from underrepresented communities. There is a little bit of leeway in terms of, like, is this a film about an underrepresented community? Is there enough input from people from underrepresented communities? So that is something that I'm going to look at if we seem to be having a whole bunch of films that look like they're maybe could be the wrong demographic, but we'll take it as it comes, and it is something that I do anticipate happening at a certain point, just because it's something that I definitely experienced with MISFF.
Amber, can I ask you, do you because I use Film Freeway, and my high-end submission total topped like 800 films one year, and being the person that watches everything and picks the films, it's pretty daunting to go through that. So Film Freeway has helped me by categorizing certain things and putting out questionnaires. So you have to answer a few questions if you are actually this, and it helps kind of weed out the people who are just seeing, oh, film festival, I'm sending my film in.
Yes. So we do have questions set up for entry. I have we put them on and then we took them off because we just want to see how things kind of progress naturally for a little while. But we do still have set questions ready to go back up, like, are you a filmmaker from a marginalized community, such as, you know, are you queer, trans, non-binary, BIPOC, neurodivergent, disabled, femme, you know, and this is not an exhaustive list, so feel free to, you know, mention something that we may not have. So there's a yes or no, and then there's a written kind of like a long text that we have set up so that you can kind of introduce yourself, and, you know, express which identities, you know, you, or which communities you're from. Yeah, they're ready to go should we need them at the moment, because we're a new festival. I just want to see how things happen naturally for a little while. But I think that if we are getting a lot of submissions that are, you know, outside of the frame of what we're looking to elevate and promote, that those will definitely go back up.
It does. It's very helpful in my case. Because one thing, local filmmakers are free at our festival, and people see the free and then try to slide that film in, and you like, I check every film. I go through, and if someone sent something into the local section or Voices Heard, which is free, I do a background check, like basically a Google search, that does this person live in this state? You know, a lot of times, no.
Yeah, I ended up having to do that with MISFF quite a bit, because I watched all of the 540 something films, which was arduous, but I'm glad that I did it because it was a good experience. But oftentimes filmmakers who submit won't submit artist bios or artist statements, so it makes it really difficult, particularly if it's a film that contains something like violence against women and femmes. I really want to see who that's coming from, because it could be something meaningful if it's from a femme presenting director, but, you know, it could be less so if it's from a male presenting director. So like Googling, you know, who people are, what their background is in terms of like, you know, just who they are as a filmmaker, I have found to be like, yeah.
Well,
I have a comment in regards to that. I never quite understood why, when you're submitting your film on Film Freeway, why a filmmaker would not want to, you know, fill out like their artist statement, or like even put in their picture or something. I want to know who's behind, you know, creating this work. And when they don't do that, it really, you know, it does not leave a good impression on me, even though, you know, the movie might be really great. It's just that, you know, it leaves questions just in terms of being a program, like, you know, who is this person? Sometimes it's just like, you know, why wouldn't you want to, you know, to let us know who you are? What are you hiding? Come on.
I think that's mostly in my case. I'm not sure with you. Young filmmakers who weren't taught how to do an EPK. You know, they don't know that you're supposed to give a poster or headshot or bio or any of that. They just don't know, because their film instructor never showed them how to do that.
And one thing I'll say too, like I went to EWM, and it's primarily an art film school, and there aren't many people there, at least when I went there, maybe it's changed now. There aren't many people there who are teaching you film festival etiquette. I learned more from the, like, for lack of a term, the elder statesmen, you know, the people who are just about to graduate, about that than I did from anyone who went to school there. And like, it was a long time before I even learned what an EPK is. So let's talk about that. let's pretend someone's watching this who has no idea what an EPK is. What is it? What should they have? And what's most important? What are you looking for when it comes to an EPK?
So an EPK is an electronic press kit, and that has information such as your bio, a director's statement, long and short synopsis is very handy because some festivals want short synopses to go in the program, but maybe longer to go online. You also have still images from your film. And you, not necessarily like part of that, but as well as that, you'll need a digital projecting copy to the specifications of the film festival. Did I miss anything? Sorry, I'm rushing because of the 9 minutes.
I would say that when you fill out your Film Freeway, most people use Film Freeway now. Try to fill it out in as much detail as you can. Even the credits, they will list things like what genre is your film, and a lot of people leave that blank. You know, where was it shot? A lot of people leave that blank too. It's a lot of information is helpful, you know, in the terms of like, okay, this is how this person views their film. This is the genre or category they think their film fits into. And when you leave stuff like that blank, or if you don't have a headshot or bio, it, like Theo said, sometimes you go, God, I love this film, but I'm gonna have to do a lot of work to get all this stuff, because a lot of times people don't really communicate back and forth anymore. I think a lot of people these days, I find younger filmmakers just tend to text more instead of email more. And the process is drawn out a little bit more in trying to get that stuff.
And just to add to all of that, I use that as my first filter, really. Like, you know, when you have a billion movies to watch and you're like dreading having to go through like all of them, I really should be excited. You're thinking to yourself, you're going to pick the best of the bunch to start off with, because that's going to, as a programmer, it's going to set your experience up for the rest of the films that you're going to watch. So you want to grab, you know, you really want to pick and choose, like, okay, this is what I'm interested in, this looks interesting, blah 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 blah, and just like start off on a great foot and have like the best screening experience before you get to like some of the other ones that are a little bit more difficult to get through because they're either too long, or the, you know, the content is challenging, or, you know, it's just something that you're not interested in. Sometimes it's, you know, the longer ones or the ones that you're not interested in are the ones that, you know, that really sort of surprise you and wind up being the gems. Not all the time, some of the times, but, you know, those are the ones that, you know, you really, you know, you're picking through the, you know, to find the needle in the haystack.
How important is length?
Very important for me.
It's very important for me as well. I have a limit for MISFF. 20 minutes is the max we will do, because programming 20-minute films can be really difficult when you have like one day of festival programming. And I've also specifically listed, like in the rules and guidelines, that we do have a preference for films that are like 5 to 10 minutes or under 5 minutes. And the way that the submission category works kind of divides that up for like under 5 minutes, 6 to 20, and then, or 6 to whatever, 3 different divides of like time for like micro shorts, short shorts, and like medium shorts, because I can't do over 20 minutes either to program them, put them into a program, or just for my sanity, because I'm primarily running the fest by myself. Yeah, so length is important.
I do 15 minutes, but you know, a film festival is also a business. I can't program my film festival with nothing but 15-minute films. The sweet spot that most film programmers say is 7 minutes, because if your film is good, it doesn't have to be great. If it's good and you think people will like it, more festival programmers will look at a 7-minute film than, oh, I gotta fit this 15 in there somehow. because 2 7-minute films are 15 minutes. And the more films you have, the more seats you're going to fill as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I gotten some recommendations from Ross and his film festivals for Utopia's first one, and they turned out to be really just what I needed. And when I go to other film festivals and I watch their programming, that's what I'm gravitating towards. A shorts program, you want to have that sort of wide experience and program as much as possible, and give as much opportunity to other filmmakers. But you're also programming for the audience, and they're there to see like a whole bunch of really good stuff. So
yeah.
Is there an art to programming a shorts block, or even just programming a film festival in general? But since Ross's Film Festival is a short film festival, I figured we would tailor it to that. Is there an art to film programming and trying to put everything together?
I can answer that question. For me, yes, there's definitely an art. For myself, it's a chaotic art because it really depends on what what's coming in, or what in terms of like mine's a curated festival for the time being. What I'm coming across, and so it's sort of like laying it all out on the table and just seeing what connects, what's the connective tissue amongst films in terms of themes, or in terms of filmmakers, locations, whatever. And every now and then, well, again, I'm talking like like Utopia's only been around for 1 year, so in this case, we had one really good programming block that consisted of like 2 films, and it actually turned out that the actors from both of the films knew each other. And it was very strange because they wound up showing up at the film festival together, and they didn't let me know that they had known each other, so it was a big surprise for me. But so they both showed up, and it was like probably one of the best programming blocks because we had everybody there, and they were so grateful to have their films screened together. And then they met other filmmakers that were there that were just really were in awe. It almost felt like they belonged together. So in that case, it was lightning in a bottle, and we want to try to find that. But really it is just about throwing it out on the table, seeing what connects, and making those choices, like making a mixtape, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing begets another, and trying to find that through line in terms of the experience of watching these films together.
I'll add that there is a difference in what I like and what I program. Because if I program what I like, very few people would probably come. But it's I try to what I do is I call these 2 different types of films: an anchor film and an audience film. An anchor film is pretty much one that can probably lead off your block, that like, this is a solid film, it's good, and this probably will bring people in. And then you just kind of like move on from that anchor film. So I always look for the anchor film first, and always keep in mind all the other films I've seen, and then program what flows from film to film. And not necessarily a theme will happen, but it's hard to, when you get like 600 some films, a theme this year is legacy, mostly because it's our 25th year and we have a lot of returning filmmakers. So legacy is the theme there. So the films didn't really have to follow a theme. The festival's theme was legacy. So it's hard to try to sometimes get a theme going, but you just see what film might complement another film.
I really like the analogy of the mixtape, and definitely agree with the anchor films. The way that I program is kind of the way I edit. It's also a little bit chaotic. I have my own editing style, which I call choreographical editing. I edit to music a lot with a lot of like very blunt, sharp cuts. And I use some very small cuts and some bigger cuts. And so it's kind of like a mosaic, and I approach programming in the same way, in terms of like both the tones of the film and the length of the film. The length of the film I like to mix up a lot, because if you're sitting for like blocks of the same amount of time, it can be arduous, like taxing on an audience. And even though, it is nice to kind of have like some running theme or motif or something that binds your films together in the blocks, I also think it's good to mix things up a little bit so that it's not totally monotonous. You're not watching like all 16mm artist-made experimental films. You're not watching all kitschy little horror films. You're not watching, all really intense social commentary films. Like I definitely like to mix it up, and yeah, mosaic is the best way I can explain
I will
my
say that I
approach.
will say this. Most filmmakers that I've come across, and I see a lot of films made in Wisconsin. I see a lot of films made outside Wisconsin. Filmmakers tend to focus on drama. A lot of filmmakers, their main idea is, I got this great idea. It's a human drama. All this, film festivals need comedies too. It helps break up the drama in blocks. And for the past couple of years, you're just like, God, I need a good comedy just to split up this heavy drama from this heavy drama.
No, that makes complete sense. And I've always found it interesting, like, because we've all been in an audience, and it's not necessarily the films itself, but we've all been to a film festival where just something feels off about the way it flows. And that could be, like you said, you've all said, that can be a tough balance. But how do you handle it if someone submits a film to your festival that has content that you don't necessarily agree with? How do your own personal feelings come into something? So say if it's got problematic language or problematic content, how do you handle something like that?
Problematic content in terms of language or themes or social ideas?
However you want to take that, because there's a lot of different ways you can go with that. So, either or, wherever your heart's taking you, because I feel like it could be an interesting answer no matter which route you go with. When I ask the question, I'm more thinking of like problematic themes, like say racism, homophobia, things like that. But even language.
Generally, I don't program films that I'll draw the line here. There's very little that offends me, being how old I am. I've seen a lot. But there's things that I disagree with socially. And if a film is showing harm against a certain group, an animal, something, I won't program those films. They can find their other film festival that agrees with those ideologies. In terms of content, I'm pretty open-minded in that, in the sense I had a film where I knew was going to be divisive. It was a play, and the play was basically two naked women arguing for 10 minutes. And it was shot in this handheldish way and incredibly artfully done. But a lot of people were put off by the nudity. And I've programmed films where they're a little violent too. But, my film festival is basically R-rated. Most filmmakers who make films in their 20s and 30s don't really make family films from what I see. So I get films that are basically R-rated. You know, I have people complain, well, where's your family films? But a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, until they start raising their own families, they don't think about making it something family-esque, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like I definitely agree with Ross re like ideologies. There are certain things that I'm not going to program because I don't believe in promoting those belief systems, and I agree that they can find other platforms and festivals. In terms of problematic content, it depends who the filmmaker is and whether there's a point to it or not. So if it's something, because I personally make films that could be taken as being offensive, because I deal with things like societal violence and violence against women, and normative sexuality and gender roles and stuff like that, but there's a social commentary behind them, and the person making them is not a cishet white guy. So, you know, like when I was programming MISFF, there were so many films that were just like gratuitous violence against women, femmes, queer people, animals. Like there was a lot of stuff all made by like cishet white filmmakers, and I was like, that's absolutely a no for me, because there wasn't a point to it other than like, I just want to make this film because I think it's edgy, or I think it's cool, or just because I can. And so films like that for me are a very hard no. But if it's a film that contains something problematic because it's discussing a problematic area and it's made by a filmmaker who is from that community, or, you know, has people working on crew, or, you know, I can't think of the word at the moment. Not advising, but like if there's influence and investment from people within that community, it makes a really big difference, as opposed to somebody completely removed from that community who just wants to use language that they feel like they can get away with, or just be violent for no reason. If that makes sense. I have a pretty hard line for that. But if it's saying something and it's made by somebody who is trying to, you know, get people to think about something and acknowledge something and discuss something, then, you know, those are two very different things for me.
I don't really have that problem in terms of Utopia in its current incarnation. And being a curated festival, I get to really sort of pick and choose, you know, my content, even though I do come across things that, you know, will pique my interest, and you know, and then like maybe 3 or 4 minutes into it, I go, oh, that's what they're getting at. And I just, you know, I can't touch it. But I do, like I said, I'm a screener for other film festivals. And, you know, again, it depends on what the what you say, identity of that festival is. I mean, you're not going to. I hope not, because you know it can get rather expensive, right? You know, that filter of having a festival fee really sort of discourages filmmakers from submitting to certain festivals where they know that they clearly do not have a chance, you know, getting into, and that they have no reason being in. Like, you know. So you know, that's one thing. When you have a festival fee, that sort of, you know, is another line of defense, sort of a filter for discouraging certain types of films being submitted to festivals. Yeah. But in terms of, you know, just you know, coming across that type of content, you know, you have to take into consideration who the audience is, what has been the identity of the festival in terms of what they program, and you know, again, reading that bio, it's like, you know, who is this coming from? You know, is this person just, you know, is what are they trying to accomplish? You know, that really plays heavily into making some really educated and reasonable decisions without being a censor, I think.
I'd like to add, if you don't mind, is that Theo brought up a point, is that know the film festival. If you're a young filmmaker and you want to send your film to a film festival, submission fees are a lot of money these days, and they can rack up. Research your film festival you want to send to first. See if your film fit. Most of these film festivals have websites where they have previous years there. You can see what they program. You can see if your film fits what they program. And it will save you a lot of grief, and it will save you a lot of time and maybe a lot of money to just find out about these places first before you start dropping money everywhere. I saw a guy send something to a friend of mine who programs a festival, and this guy was pretty mad that he got rejected. And he said he's spent a lot of money like sending his films out, and he just sent a really nasty response to his rejection letter. It's like, one, don't do that. The festival programmers will know and remember you. Two, it's if you research that film festival, you probably should have not sent your film in. Because he was saying he spent like, a few $100s on submission fees over the last year, sending his film to many different festivals and got rejected by every festival. And you're just going to save yourself a lot of grief. I have to disqualify a lot of films at Voices Heard because they're not made by local filmmakers of color. They send me films, and it's like, you don't live in this state. It's like, I can't take your film. You don't live in Wisconsin. And I even had a white guy from Wisconsin send me 3 feature films. He obviously didn't read the guidelines. And then he got mad that I rejected all 3. And it's like, he said that, well, I'm German. That's multicultural. It's like, you're still a white guy. Filmmakers of color. It says that in the guidelines clearly,
Oh, so I don't know if this is going to be a question that will have a real answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways, because it's kind of inspired of something Ross just said. You had a filmmaker who, and like you said, fees for submitting to film festivals can get really high. I'm submitting my film to festivals right now, and it's like, you kind of have to weigh, like, can I afford it right now? Should I wait? And you said, like you said, this gentleman or woman, I'm not too sure who, was submitted to a bunch of film festivals, spent a lot of money, and didn't get accepted into any. It's hard as a filmmaker, and I'm sure everyone here knows this, to sometimes view your film critically because you spent so much time with it. When should a filmmaker just stop trying to submit it? They should never stop. Okay.
Well, I say never give up your dream of being a filmmaker.
No. I mean, like, say if you have a film that's just not working, and it's just like, maybe it did well locally, but it's not hitting anywhere else. At what point should they cut their losses and just try a new film?
I think that you need to get used to rejection. You need to get used to it. You need to look at the email, get to the unfortunately, and just move on. I don't know if it's because I grew up acting, and so I'm just like, if you get rejected, you got to move on. But if you're doing the research and if you're hitting the festivals that are the types of festivals that will showcase your film, you're going to get in somewhere. Or trying the smaller festivals, more underground festivals, more local festivals. It's almost unheard of that a fresh filmmaker is going to get into Sundance or TIFF or like Slamdance, one of these big festivals. I won't get into the politics of those festivals, but like, look at festivals that look achievable and that are the same genre, the same, that are fitting your film. And if you still are not getting anywhere, maybe you do need to just say, okay, well, this film didn't quite work out. I've spent enough money on it, and let's, try and make something new. Because I mean, at the end of the day, I think as filmmakers, we can all agree that you want your film to keep getting into festivals, but at a certain point, even if it is getting into festivals, like you reach a point where you're like, I can't sink any more money into festival submissions for this film, whether it's doing well or not doing well. There's like a cap financially, and that plays into it as well.
If you are a local filmmaker in your own state, there is probably a good chance you will be in a local film festival there. Like our state has right now, I think 16, 17 film festivals in our state.
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
There's a chance you'll make one of them. One thing I will say is that I find that with Wisconsin filmmakers, I don't see this with other filmmakers. Because I get a lot of films and I check where they've screened, and I see these filmmakers outside of Wisconsin send their films all over the place. There tends to be something within the Wisconsin filmmaker mentality is, I'm just going to hit all these local film festivals and that's my run. I see very few of them actually show that they've been in film festivals outside of Wisconsin, because I see their screener list. We played here, 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 here. It's take a chance outside too. You know, a local film festival will always take your film. Like I don't know how many filmmakers there are in this state, but someone will take your film. There's like 17 film festivals here. You may not like where they put your film. It may not be opening night or whatever, but there's a chance you're going to get in somewhere in this state. Just the odds of it. But look elsewhere, like Amber said, there's a lot of like smaller festivals outside of Wisconsin that are probably dying for content. Like Theo's Festival's brand new.
Thanks for the plug, Ross.
Yeah, they're looking for content too. And sometimes it's like you send something, it's like, oh, I'll give this film a chance. I mean, sometimes I program films and I hear back from judges like, man, that film wasn't very good. It's like, well, I like to give someone a shot too, because I know that like, say 10, 15 people worked on that film and it's local. It may not be the most polished. I will give it a slot because I know those people will be supportive. They're younger filmmakers who aren't as polished, and from there on they can learn, and they're going to make another film, and that film will probably be better too. Sometimes this is their first film festival, you know?
Well, that actually leads on to a great question. Do you feel, as programmers, do you guys sometimes feel like Ross does, where sometimes you'll give a film a shot just because it's got moxie, just because there's something about it, even if it's not necessarily good, just something about it that you're like, that's speaking to you? Because don't get me wrong, I'm sure you get some really good polished films. Like, but sometimes it's that gritty, weird little thing made in someone's bedroom that just speaks to you, and you can't quite speak why. Like, do you feel like you find yourself giving filmmakers a chance quite a bit?
Did you want to answer this, Amber? Or...
Oh, sure. I just had like a quick short answer to it. During MISFF, there was a film that I fought tooth and nail for that I was not gonna not have in the festival. It wasn't the most polished film. It was a little bit strange in its application. It was a bit rough around the edges, but it said something. And like, I was just not gonna take no for an answer, and I didn't. And that film screened, and it was the first film festival that filmmaker had ever screened in, and it was a wonderful experience for her. And like, there were other programmers that fought really hard for other films, whereas the lead programmer was really wanting this certain aesthetic and polished and filmmakers that he knew. And there are a couple of us fighting for films that were a bit rougher around the edges and a bit different, and maybe not as polished, but we wanted to see them in the festival. Like, particularly as filmmakers, like you want your weird little film to get out there, and like as a programmer I want to show those weird little films too. Like it does not need to be the most polished film, it doesn't have to have a huge budget, it has to be a finished film, but for my festival personally, but it can be a bit rough around the edges. It just has to like excite me or move me or, you know, surprise me, and I will program it.
I'll like to add with where Amber answered that yeah, those weird little films are can be something else, and just in terms of like the festival experience, because you're programming a cinematic experience that audiences cannot get at their local Cineplex. They're not going to see a Marvel film or DC or whatever is, you know, hot out there, and you know you're programming for a type of audience that is sort of hungry for something else. And in terms of like, you know, against something quirky that may not be as polished, but might have either a point of view or a character that, you know, is being represented that, you know, we've never seen before. I screened a film that was completely acted by trans actors, and I was blown away because I had never seen anything like this before, and I'm like, wow, you know. This is something that you won't have that experience in just a commercial Cineplex, or for that matter, I hadn't seen that at a film festival as of late. You know, at least the ones that I had been to. So that was definitely something that I marked, you know, with a sticker to have somebody look at and say, hey, can we find a place for this, because it's important. And you know, when you come across those little gems, you kind of do have to champion them, because you know they need a little help to get over either people's perceptions or what we're comfortable with. Just just overall, you know, people get comfortable with what, you know, the type of movies that we like. But, you know, to see beyond that and go, hey, you know, there's something happening here. You know, imagine what, you know, the next couple of films where this filmmaker would be, and to see some sort of growth and to follow that career. And I think that's, you know, I see that happen at a bunch of film festivals where they'll reinvite, you know, these filmmakers that make these quirky little films, and it'll be like, wow, you know, they've really come a long way, and their voices have sort of evolved cinematically, and you know, are really delivering experiences that you know, that are unique to film.
If I can add something, it's, to me, I enjoy programming those films that are a little rough around the edges, because I get so many films that are so slickly polished. It's nice to break that up too. I get a lot of films, and I have to factor in many different things in programming. I have to make sure I have enough films by female filmmakers. I have to make sure I'm treating my legacy filmmakers well, and I have to make sure I got enough films by filmmakers of color in the LGBT community. So you have to look at all these things to make your film festival diverse, because like when I started, the only films I was getting were by young white men from UWM. And thankfully, within a few years, it started changing. And sometimes those slick movies that people worked on and polished in their film school class for their senior thesis project are nice, but they all seem to look a little the same. So it's nice to having a film that's a little rough around the edges. And those filmmakers love having their film screen, you know?
So I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this. Is a filmmaker having their film available on the internet for people to see, is that going to hurt its chances of getting into a film festival? Well,
Yeah.
why? Let's elaborate. Why is that a bad thing? And why should filmmakers not have their stuff on the internet for everyone to see?
I have a bit of a complicated answer for this. In general, yes, it shouldn't be freely available. It should be unlisted or password protected if you're wanting to get into festivals, because if people can just go and watch it online for free, they're not going to pay to see it at a festival. The exception is for appropriated media, found footage, sampled projects. From a legal aspect, if you have them freely available online, it just helps as a filmmaker making things out of sampled materials that it is freely available as well as being in festivals. And usually that won't hurt your chances of screening in a festival if that is freely available, but that's a very specific niche film that not a lot of filmmakers are making. So outside of that really tiny niche, yeah, you need to unlist it or password protect it while you're in the festival circuit.
I've had a few occasions where filmmakers got really angry at me for not taking their film because it was on YouTube. And I think filmmakers also lose sight of the fact that a film festival is also a business. We want to celebrate filmmakers, but it's also a business. If your cast, crew, family, and friends have already seen that YouTube link, they're not coming, to show up at the film festival. And you also have to consider what's best for your film. Getting all your family and friends to see it first before you see it at the film festival on a big screen where everyone's applauding you, or, not. It's many film festivals. If you want to be in an Oscar qualifying film festival too, no YouTube, no Vimeo, nothing. Oscar qualifying film festivals will not take those films. And if you want to go up the ladder and improve as a filmmaker and keep doing films that you think someday your film will be available to be in an Oscar qualifying film festival, like I said, I had a filmmaker up north was really angry and told me that, well, other film festivals take them. It's like, well, I don't. If everyone can see it, they're not coming to the film festival. It's also the same with premieres. I choose to show films that are mostly premieres, because if they screened elsewhere and frequently, I'm not going to program them, because they're not going to come back and see it again. You get one shot with your audience, really. And in this day and age where people are more likely to sit at home and stream something, it's become more important to have a premiere these days.
Yeah,
Continue.
Oh no, that's all right. Just in terms of having it available on YouTube, typically a big no. Again, my festival is still evolving, and some of these projects have been out for quite a long time. I had made promises to a couple of filmmakers when we were about to launch in 2020, and I kept them in mind, or I actually kept them close, and they were able to premiere, or at least to screen at my festival when we actually launched in 2023. But by that time, their films had already made the circuit of film festivals, in the pandemic era. So they didn't have like the full festival experience with audiences and whatnot. They had online experiences. And when they got to my festival, they had a theatrical experience, which was quite different, but they had to wait for that. But they still didn't, they didn't have their projects on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So, it's, again, keeping if it's something that you hold very valuable, you know, and you want to have a really good experience for the audience. Just try to keep it off of off of the YouTube for as long as possible before you're ready to share it with the world. Even then, cut a trailer, show people what it's about first, and then build a sort of an anticipation for watching it. That's probably a little bit more valuable than just throwing it out there.
Perfect. Well, we've only got about 2 minutes left. So what I want to first do is I want to thank you both, for joining us here today for this panel. I think we've gotten through some great questions, and we probably could keep going, but I think we found the nice happy medium. But before I go, or before we all go, I just want you both to have another chance to tell the world what your film festival is called, and if you and what you're looking for as briefly as possible.
So my film festival is called Milwaukee Illuminate Film Festival, or MIFF. You can find us on Film Freeway. We're searchable, Milwaukee Illuminate Film Festival, or you can go to our website, which is illuminatefilmfest.com. We are only looking for films, short films, 20 minutes or less, that are made or represent marginalized communities, so queer, trans, BIPOC, Indigenous, disabled, neurodivergent, all that stuff. Those are the films we're looking for.
And you, Theo, what is your film festival called again?
Oh, I'm Theophilus Jamal, and my film festival is called Utopia Motion Picture Film Festival. You can find us you can find us on Facebook. We have a splash page there of Utopia Motion Picture Festival. We'll type that out. And the way to get into our festival, show it at Ross's Film Festival, or get out, or show it at Amber's Film Festival. I get out and I watch. I go to as many film festivals as possible, and I will find you. I will stalk you if your film is good, and I will find you and I will program you.
Perfect. Well, I think this was a great conversation. And once again, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. And I got it done before the time ran out.